This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed Business News, Australia's best business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, our weekend show is all about the two of us each nominating what we think is the biggest business news story of the week, the most remarkable business story of the week, a sleeper story, which is one where we try and pick something out that's flying under the radar just a wee bit, and then our favourite business-ish story. And it's very competitive. We like to have a winner because that makes it very exciting. And so we are joined every week by a judge, an esteemed judge, and that esteemed judge is absent. So we have our Fear and Greed colleague, Adam Lang. Just kidding. Adam, good morning.
Good morning, Michael.
I haven't got myself off to the best start here, have I?
I think we should try and get Judge Judy at some point.
What a great idea.
Yeah, she can't turn up at Nikki Haley. She was one of the presidential candidates' sort of warm-up act. Wouldn't it be great to get Judge Judy on Fear and Greed?
Though you think about what we could pay her to do this would be fairly kind of insignificant.
But we know for her, it's not about the money.
It's about the justice.
It's the honour of being on Fear and Greed and administering justice. Quite right, Michael.
Oh, all right. Well, shall we jump into it then? And we'll find the biggest story of the week. And so, Adam, Judge Judy Lang is in. What's the saying when they say is in
session?
In session, yeah, something like that. Yeah. You know what? I'm going to research these things before we start next week. Maybe give the illusion of preparation. All right. Biggest story of the week.
Go for it, Michael.
All right. Parliament resumed this week. And no, I'm not going to attempt, Adam, and I can see you're looking wary already. I'm not going to attempt to get the tax cuts, the stage 3 tax cut changes through as my biggest story for a third week in a row. That would be setting some kind of a record, although it is part of it, to be fair, because the government did secure the support of the opposition to pass those changes to the stage 3 tax cuts. And that is very significant because it both mutes one of the coalition's big attacks over the broken promise, but also prevents the crossbenchers, including the Greens, from pushing the government to go harder. But somewhere the Greens have had a big win this week is in industrial relations. And this is the biggest story of the week. The government has reached a deal to push through the second part of its IR reform. This is huge, right? It sets minimum standards for gig economy workers, as well as defining at what point casual workers convert to permanent employment. The other big part, the one that everyone seems to have an opinion on, is the right to disconnect, because under the new laws, workers will effectively be able to ignore the boss's calls, the boss's texts, the boss's emails, all after hours. You've got business leaders like Flight Centre's Graham Turner has described the reform as overkill. Jerry Harvey says he can't see the logic from Harvey Norman, but the fact is that these reforms are going to change the nature of employment in Australia, and for many, change the way their work and their personal life intersect. It is by far the biggest story of the week, and possibly the biggest surprise, I've kept it quite brief.
Ooh, I'm sure you're missing about 10 minutes worth of chat there. Surely.
There's so much more detail I could put in, but you know what? I thought for once, I'm going to put our listeners first.
I've got to say, that is a really big story. And the fact that Adam's not allowed to be sending you and I messages now late at night is an absolute win. But I think that's I'm just saying it's a bit passive-aggressive to actually be getting a point across to Adam using the show. Anyway, my biggest story of the week, it's obviously the economy, Michael.
The Joseph intervention.
Give me a chance, mate. I mean, I've had 15 seconds and you have a Joseph intervention. Goodness gracious.
For the first time ever, I took a step back and I thought, I'm not going to protest. I'm going to let the judge intervene in this one. And he did.
Jeez.
Because, of course, the Joseph intervention goes back to last year when we had a listener complaining about the fact that Sean always chooses the economy as his biggest story, and it's impossible to beat the economy because it's just so big, and therefore it's always going to win, and therefore you have to pick a specific story. So, Adam, you have done the right thing in invoking the Joseph intervention. So, Sean, you have 10 seconds to explain yourself.
To comply.
Withdrawn. Biggest story of the week is the Reserve Bank's board meeting. We found out this week that the central bank will still hike rates if necessary. Still hike rates if necessary, though it seems pretty happy with the way the economy is heading. The central bank put out new forecasts. It reckons inflation is heading towards 3.3% by the middle of this year, though it might take a little bit longer to hit the midpoint of the 2 to 3% target. It's interesting that Governor Michelle Bullock said once she thinks inflation is slayed, S-L-A-Y-E-D, slayed, like a dragon, as opposed to once the official figures show it, then she'll move on rates. That's different to Phil Lowe, who used to say, no, we're going to wait until it hits the target or moves outside the target before we do anything on rates. The consensus view among economists now is that the next move in rates will be in September. Next move in rates. Oof. Big story. Affects everyone, far more than those few casuals and gig economy workers. That's all I'd like to say. Also good to see Michelle Bullock talk about the fact that some people are doing it tough and the best way for the Reserve Bank to help out is to control inflation. Also afterwards, lots of talk that narrow path to a soft landing in Australia is getting wider. Big story. What makes it even bigger is that the economic settings are getting back to normal after about 15 years. Big story, Michael. Big story of the week. After 15 years. Financial markets getting back to normal. The ASX 200 is trading around record highs. Bond returns are pretty good still. Interest rates, yes, they're high, but at least they're in the realm of normal, which they haven't been for a while. Makes investing more predictable. Massive story this week. Over to you, Adam.
High quality battle to start. There's only 1 point in it. And it's astounding to me to say that, Michael, you win.
That is astounding, actually. That is astounding.
I'm honoured. I'm touched. I feel like I'm due.
Well, no, it's not because it was your turn, Michael. It's the quality of the battle. The Reserve Bank decision this week on interest rates to keep them on pause, I think it was largely expected. And so it wasn't terrific new news. It was really the biggest indicator going into it was the CPI, the inflation numbers that we got last week. So incredibly important, and what a great relief it was last week to see inflation coming down and interest rates stay on hold and that path towards lowering them, so important. But Michael, this is huge. And the fact that the government politically has navigated this through towards the lower house and passing into legislation, the impact here will be absolutely profound. These are big industrial relation laws changes. The rights for casuals to have their employment status changed, the right to disconnect. This is hugely important. So really interesting. And Michael, you just win this week.
Oh, that is very good news. Thank you, Adam. Just very, very quickly, because we have given you a fair bit of
feedback,
bit of a hard time about the right to disconnect. Where do you stand on it? Like, what do you actually make of this? Because you are someone who has managed a lot of people, and you continue to lead teams. How do you feel that fits in kind of with the ability of people to work when they want to work as well? Because it's one thing to actually have an expectation that people attend to these calls or these emails after hours. But what if people want to work kind of different hours? Or what about if your job actually requires a more urgent response than just between 9 and 5?
So I try to, unless it's in exceptional situations, any emails I do a lot of emails outside of work hours, but I schedule it to send in work hours, and those work hours typically never before 8 a.m. Monday to Friday, right? Some people don't work a Monday or a Friday or a Wednesday, and I think you just have to have that honest conversation that, you know, the expectation is that two things: the business operates between these hours, and we understand that you won't get to it when you're not on. So I think it's absolutely workable. It just starts with the right conversations up front.
Yeah, but well before this legislation, right? If I'm sitting there watching TV and Adam gives me a ring, buggered if I'm answering that. Never have, never will.
Even if you're just watching TV at 10 a.m. 10 a.m. on a weekday. Yeah. You're watching Judge Judy.
Judge Judy, that's right. Let's move on.
All right, we need to get on. Okay, so that's 1-0. Not that it's about the score. Now, most remarkable. Sean, would you like to go first on this one?
I would. The size of the global streaming market. This week we found out that Americans streamed 20% more content last year compared to a year earlier. In total, they streamed 21 million years worth of video. How's that for a stat? Also remarkable is that the number of shows and movies to choose from is almost 1 million. We've almost hit that mark from over 90 streaming services. This is in the US. Now, it depends on how you define a streaming service. I mean, SBS On Demand is a streaming service. But in terms of the major streamers that are outside free-to-air, there's probably about 9 in Australia. Figures aren't available for 2023, but I guarantee you there's been plenty more minutes in 2023 than 2022. Keeping this remarkable story going, the number one show last year was actually 12 years old. Suits. 57.7 billion minutes of viewing in the US. That is quite incredible. According to Nielsen, Suits was ostensibly an original Netflix show for many viewers because they hadn't watched it previously on the network that was running it. That was called the USA Network. I love the fact that Bluey was the number one children's show, Bluey, about the Aussie cattle dog, Michael's favourite show. 43.9 billion minutes streamed last year. Another interesting fact is that older shows are getting a good run. Things like NCIS, Grey's Anatomy always do well, but Friends made a comeback last year, probably after the untimely death of one of its stars, Matthew Perry. Also, the top-rated original show was on Apple TV, Ted Lasso. Fantastic.
Oh,
This is your show, Mike. That is your show. I just think it's quite remarkable how well the streamers have done. And we found out just how well they've done this week. Also, the fact that I look at how much I spend on streaming each month, and, it's somewhere between $100 and $200. Now, about 10 years ago, when I got Netflix, I reckon it's about $12. And so to create this market, and so there's 9 streaming services, and I think I've got 7 of the 9. This household has 9 of the 9, but I think I pay for 7 of the 9. And because the shows are disparate across them, they've just created this phenomenal market. And it is quite remarkable and a bit interesting, as opposed to those first 2 stories we talked about. Michael.
Got him.
Excuse me.
Got him a beauty.
Sorry, you got me.
He saw you take a sip of coffee.
I was taking a sip of my coffee,
and timed it perfectly.
And I was actually going to mention the coffee as well. I thought this is a perfect opportunity to mention the fact that I'm drinking Voodoo X coffee. And then you made me choke on it, Sean. So, because of course, Voodoo X is the coffee supplied to us by Blue Chip Communications, which is a fantastic sponsor of ours. I don't know how happy they would be to hear me choking on the coffee, but it was no fault of the coffee. It was purely Sean Aylmer's fault. Okay.
Horrendous. Go on, Michael, your most remarkable story.
Look, my most remarkable story is in fact linked to the second biggest story of the week, which was the Reserve Bank board meeting. But the most remarkable part of this is the changes at the Reserve Bank and the fact that we are in now the new era of the RBA. And in particular, right, I wanted to talk about Governor Michelle Bullock's performance at the press conference following the meeting, because of course, as we discussed before, the outcome of the meeting itself wasn't really a surprise with interest rates on hold, and I won't get into too much of kind of what was said because Sean has canvassed that in a fairly dull way, to be honest. But it is in the most remarkable category because of the transparency behind the bank's decision. This is, as I said, the new era of the RBA. We've got longer meetings, we've got fewer of them, more consultation and discussions within the bank, and then a media conference afterwards. And that, I thought, was really, really fascinating. Because for someone who hasn't done a huge amount of media, I thought that Governor Michelle Bullock was actually pretty incredible. I thought she used such clear language. She communicated so clearly. There was no arrogance in the way that she answered questions, and sometimes questions that you would know for sure that were kind of oversimplifying the issue. And she took the time to explain economic concepts and modeling, and she fielded question after question after question, some of them looking for a bit of a gotcha moment, perhaps like a very firm commitment on what rates were going to do. And to her immense credit, she just took it all in her stride, never looked flustered, not even for a moment, and not repeating the mistakes of her predecessor in making those firm predictions that kind of paint them into a corner. It was, I thought, a pretty remarkable performance overall and a really great exercise in transparency for the Reserve Bank. And so I just thought it was a remarkable thing that was a one-off in terms of we'll never see the first one again. We'll see another one next time, but everyone now knows kind of how that's going to work, the kinds of questions that she's going to get, how she's going to handle them. I just thought for the first one, it was pretty remarkable.
I think these two stories are both remarkable in completely different ways. So, Michelle Bullock, I thought it was such a great first performance. Every one of these board meetings is 2.5 days. Can you imagine it? Coming out of a 2.5 day meeting and doing a long press conference
you
like
would
this.
love it, Adam. Adam, you would love a 2.5 day board meeting. Don't try and put one over us.
It's barely enough.
That's right. Why do we have to talk in days? Why can't we talk in weeks when it comes to board meetings? I'm with you.
So I just thought it was such a great performance. And I think the proof is in the pudding, as they say, that at the end of it we go, okay, that was really good. Like, the success is the fact that no one's reacted badly. It's like, how good was that? So I think that is absolutely remarkable. And Sean, your statistics, and as you know, we've all had experience in media, but just as on the consumer side, the way we're consuming media is still changing. That streaming went up 20%, that there's nearly 1 million shows, and that the most popular, showing that very human truth that we still love what we love, and that the most popular show is 12 years old. I think these are just such remarkable statistics. So I couldn't separate you. 0.5 point each.
Okay, that's fair. All right, 1.5 to half.
That's friggin' ridiculous, but go on.
I know, I deserved the full point, didn't I? All right, we will come back in just a moment and find a sleeper story of the week. All right, Sean, we're looking for a sleeper story of the week. So a sleeper story is perhaps a story that's not getting the attention that we think it deserves, or is going to become a bigger story further down the track. I'm going to go first on this one, if that's okay, because I like to use this category to make predictions, right?
Yeah, it's your strong suit after all.
Adam, are you biased heading into this? It feels like you are.
Nope, I'm just very alert.
Because I use this category to make predictions, bold predictions about the future. And if I lose the category, which I have done in the past, and my prediction later comes true as to what is going to be a bigger story further down the track, then I say that's grounds for appealing the decision by you, Adam.
Very well.
Just sounds like a defeat before you even start, Michael, when you say stuff like that.
Oh, my God. Oh, this show would be a lot more enjoyable without the two of you in it. Just me debating myself for 40 minutes. I could even deliver the best judgments. I suspect I would always win. My prediction this week is that we are on the brink of an all-out broadband war, because a report that we discussed this week showed that a faster NBN could deliver a $400 billion boost to the economy by 2030. And it all comes down to productivity. Because for every 1 megabit per second in average broadband speed, the country's productivity-driven GDP rose by 0.04%. But the challenge here is that more people are actually moving away from the NBN. Why? Because, and here's the key to all of this space is getting more competitive. And I use the word space quite deliberately here, because that is where the competition is coming from. Elon Musk's Starlink, using low orbit satellites to hugely improve the connectivity of people in remote areas. And they're not the only ones offering the high speed kind of 5G connections, because this is really where this competition is coming from. So this week we learn potential $400 billion boost to the economy by 2030 if we can get faster speeds to more people, more businesses connected to them. This could be the golden era of connectivity in Australia, and you heard it here first in the sleeper story category of the Fear and Greed Weekend Edition. And if I do not win for such a bold claim, then it is an absolute travesty. Sean.
Michael, do you actually understand anything you just said then? I mean, look, it was excellent entry, but did you, when you were talking about megabits and 0.004 or whatever it was, did you actually understand any of that?
Actually, I do, and I'm happy to explain it to you.
No.
Can you call Sean after hours about that? Just see if he answers.
Righto, my sleeper story. Moving on. I don't want to give you that opportunity. My sleeper story, it's very early in the reporting season, but it's very interesting that the retailers to have reported so far have well and truly beaten expectations. Satire, the luxury goods company, had a cracker with sales up nearly 90% last half. High-end consumers are still buying. Its share price jumped 25% after the result. Furniture retailer Nick Scali said earnings were down, but not as much as investors had feared. Nick Scali relies on the housing cycle. People build and they go to Nick Scali and fill it up with furniture. The company said November, December, and even into January was stronger than expected. Its share price jumped 17% on the day. Then Myer came out and upgraded its profit forecast for when it reports next month. Its share price jumped 16% that day. The biggest concern for the economy right now is the state of the household sector. With all these cost of living increases, Michelle Bullock from the Reserve Bank mentioned it the other day. Maybe, just maybe, it's not as bad as people think. Though I have to add that some people are finding it really, really tough out there, especially renters. I don't know if I'm reading too much into it. Hence, kind of this is why it's a sleeper story. I don't know whether it's right or wrong what I'm saying, but thus far, the retailers that have reported have actually done really well. So a ways to go, and some people are finding it really tough, but this has huge implications in terms of economic policy. So that's my sleeper story. The retailers that have reported have actually done better than expected, and I wonder what that means. Adam.
Both great stories. Sean wins. Consumption is 60% of the economy. Retail is about half of that. This is great news that we didn't anticipate seeing. I was really impressed to see those stats come out this week, Sean, and I think it gives me more reason for hope about where the economy is heading.
Am I the only one that as soon as you hear Adam talk about consumption, you think he's talking about tuberculosis?
Yes. I think that the answer to that question is yes.
Which century are you from, Michael? Well, perhaps that's more of an accusation of which century I come from, but we will move on. Broadband war and 5G. I really like the NBN report, obviously slightly self-serving, but we've all come to enjoy, and thank God we did it before COVID, was some of the vastly needed infrastructure investment in better communications. So we've just accepted it as normal. I'd love for that normal level to shift up a gear because we've still got plenty of spots where you cannot get available Wi-Fi, available mobile, and we just need it. It is almost as necessary as oxygen to business. So great story, Michael, but Sean just wins on this one.
Can I just add something here? Like a little gripe I have this week. There's a lot of talk about the Alan Fels report into supermarkets ripping off people and the Qantas ripping off people and all that. He did it for the ACTU. Now, Professor Fels, obviously, former boss of the ACCC, extremely well credentialed, but a gun for hire. The ACTU has a position. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. It's just that's obviously where they're coming from. Their goal or their job is to look after workers, and they do a great job at that. But can we kind of get over the Fels says this without actually attributing it to who was paying him to say it?
Sean, you and I have, I'm not sure what the collective noun for consultants is, but a cavalcade. We've had plenty of consultants that we've worked with in the past.
We certainly have.
One of the great queries you have is, if you're hiring a consultant, you tend to feel that they're asking, what do you want me to say?
So what outcome do you want? The first question.
So there are so many hired guns out there to do quasi-independent reviews that you kind of suspect there's a known outcome, or at least a realm of it that you're going to get.
I remember sitting in it was a fairly senior meeting at Fairfax, and the CEO was there and the consultants were there, one group of consultants, and somehow sitting in your eye line, Adam, which was always a problem whenever I went into a meeting with you because I'd find myself giggling. And sure enough, the consultant was saying, so the CEO would say something and then the consultant would back that up by saying exactly the same thing. And after about the third thing, the CEO said, we really have to think hard about costs. Consultant's response, yep, this is all about costs. And what we're going to have to do is there are certain areas within the business, A and B, we're going to have to focus on that. Yeah, as consultants, we think that A and B would be a good place to, so you get the gist of it. And after about the third time, glancing across and seeing you and you doing that eyebrow raise, I was gone. The rest of the meeting, your shoulders are shaking because you're laughing so hard, trying not.
Like, yeah.
This is a senior management meeting. Oh my God!
Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers, each played their parts.
Yes. We digress.
All right, so we move on. So it is now 1.5 to 1.5. So it is pretty even. I mean, can't get much more even than that, I suppose.
pretty even.
Sean, go first for the favourite story, please.
You want me to go first? Righto. This week we found out what experts in living longer do to help themselves live longer. This is a great idea. Now, I mean, I do apologise for many of the listeners because Michael went a bit silly on this one during the week. He kind of got the giggles and I don't think he treated it with the seriousness that it deserves. But basically, the Telegraph of London asked a bunch of experts what they do to live longer. What a sensible thing to ask. Longevity medicine is a growing sector because we're all getting older. Life expectancy doubled in the 20th century. If an Australian man is life expectancy is 81.3 years. For a woman, it's 85.4. So what do experts do in no particular order to help them live longer lives? Adam, feel free to jump in and support any of these. One of them works to walk with a 25-kilo rucksack. What an idiot. Another one holds a plank position for 3 minutes a day. Now, what I did say to Michael is I could do 3-minute plank.
3 by 1 minute planks.
No, 6 by 30. I wouldn't do it 3 by 1. Another one takes magnesium at night.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea. Take magnesium at night. I don't know why. And another one I particularly like, have a salad with dinner. Well, isn't that a breakthrough in longevity? Have a salad with dinner.
What an insight.
That's right. Then another person meets a friend for coffee. Whoa.
Wow.
And another one walks outside for 20 minutes every morning. I mean, how much are we paying these people to tell us how to live longer? Have a salad, meet a friend, go for a walk. Jesus. The final one, which is where Michael really lost it. Eat spermidine-rich foods. Now, you probably want to know what spermidine is.
I want to know when the story's going to end.
A substance formed by 2 amino acids. It appears in fermented plums, fermented soybeans. It's in kimchi, it's in sauerkraut, shiitake mushrooms. If you eat spermidine-rich foods...
Good for bacterial gut health.
Exactly, Adam, exactly. Michael?
It's a very interesting story. I was listening really carefully and listening for any links whatsoever to business, and I couldn't hear any, which I thought was curious considering this is a business podcast.
Aging population, Michael, the impact on health, on superannuation, so vast.
Don't you campaign for him, Adam?
Well, think of the taxpayers. Someone's got to pay for us to be old.
Did anyone say that during the story? No, he just got excited about fermented plums, and that's as far as he got.
Yeah, there we go.
My favourite story, very quickly. Sean, this is how you do it fast. So many times now, I've chosen AI and the dangers of AI as my sleeper story or my favourite story or even my most remarkable story. I've probably even done it as my biggest story. I think, and those have always been about the dangers of it. I think it's about time that I did a positive story about AI for once. And this week, we got that in a real-world business example of how artificial intelligence is improving efficiency in the workplace. Now, PwC Australia, and isn't it nice to be talking positively about PwC? For a change as well. They have adapted their own virtual assistant. It's called Chat PwC, and it allows the nearly 8,500 partners and staff and everyone there to research clients and sectors and to format data and write code and write emails and summarize meetings and summarize all their documents, all within a custom PwC environment. I reckon by this time next year, every second company will be doing something like this, and it won't even rate a mention. But for now, it just shows how quickly some big organizations have fully embraced generative AI as an efficiency tool, right? The only downside that I can see, and I do hope that PwC is taking this into account, is that with all of these staff able to do very time-consuming work in mere seconds, what is it going to mean for billable hours? Has anyone considered this? It could actually backfire on them. There you go. Very short story. What was that? 45 seconds. I get points just for brevity.
Okay. AI, Chat PwC, catchy name, really intelligent use of the tool. And you can imagine that all those experts at PwC around the world, they've done so many reports into so many industries that they can mine their own system of data, their own insights to create better work from it, like to do reports on industries for new potential clients quickly. And they know it's their information. It's not just unverified from the World Wide Web. I think that is so intelligent. So well done them. Experts living longer, not many blinding insights this week. So I can't get it on topicality or timeliness. So, Michael, you've actually brained it on this one. You win.
Congratulations, Michael, you scoundrel.
Yeah, you did the heavy lifting on developing Chat PwC after all.
Yeah. And it feels like I'm being robbed of my victory here. 2.5 to 1.5. And what was the scores?
Okay, it was dead even into round 4, the favourite story of the week. Michael, 92. Sean, 89.
Jeez, I got done over on that last story. Big time.
Yeah, the experts living longer story, I think as you pointed out, there wasn't a lot of blinding insight in that.
The insight into it was that a lot of experts aren't experts. Anyway, let's go on.
All right. Thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you, Michael.
And thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed Business News. Have a great weekend.